What's up, everybody out there in internet land? This is TC. I host a blog called Theological Graffiti. I've done that for years and years and years. But in this particular video, I'm putting the graffiti back into theological graffiti because I've done a lot of theology, but I haven't done too many pieces or videos on hip hop. And brother of mine, Brother E, is joining me on this interview today because I have wanted to interview him for years, literally for years. And he's an important brother to me. He's got a lot to say, and I just wanted to give him a voice, an opportunity to share with the internet and with the audience about his experiences in hip hop in particular. And there's a moment that we're capturing right now. The moment is this new internet series on Netflix has come out called The Get Down. And a lot of people are watching this, and I was interested in it, so I'm paying attention because I'm a hip hop head. So I'm paying attention to this. I know a lot of other people are paying attention to this show, and so I just put on Facebook, like on the 15th, I said, I wonder what Brother E thinks about this series. I'm very interested to hear his opinion, and I thought you wrote a very thoughtful comment, and so that sparked in my head. You know what? I want to have a deeper conversation about this. I'd like to hear your story and how it intersects with the birth of hip hop, which is what the show is about, really. And just talk to you about that. So would you mind just introducing yourself a little bit more thoroughly than I have to our audience?
Sure. What's up, everybody? My name is Efrain Alicea, also known as Brother E. I am the pastor of an inner city urban hip hop church in the Bronx. We're almost 9 years now. We're going into our 9th year. And we're in the North Bronx now, and we're doing all right, man. We're doing well. We've bounced around a few places, but we've kind of found a home where we're at, so we're really excited about that. And TC, man, thank you so much for this chance. It's always a joy to hang out with you, even if it's just on Skype, man. So, yeah, I've been so that your people know, I've been following the Theological Graffiti for years as well, and chiming in every now and then. And so when something adventurous hits me that you've written about, I always share it with my friends and some of my friends here at church. So it's really exciting to be a part of it today. And what did you want me to begin with?
Well, let me say something real quick before I ask you my first question. So I want to say too that when I first met you, I was pretty intimidated. I was nervous when I first met you because I knew your rep and I knew your OG of Christian hip hop.
Is that when we were in New Hampshire?
Yeah. You was at the pool table or something near the pool table, and I was like, "That Brother E, I got to go talk to Brother E." Like he co-founded Rap Fest, man. And so, but what I remember of you were warm. You were very nice to me. A punk kid, just coming into the church planting game. I think you were comfortable enough with me to tell me some hard truths about church planting, and I appreciated that. So
that was a fun night, man. That was a fun night. Get to meet you and a couple of the other fellas who were church planters, but also like myself, so engaged in hip hop. It's always exciting to me to connect with people of what I call of the tribe. So you guys, I didn't really have to explain what we do, which I always seem to have to do. But with you guys, it was just like, yeah, we bang. Well, this is who we are, and you understood. And so it's really a joy, man. And you're my brother now. We're in this for life, so it's all good.
So I know a little bit about your background. I know a little bit of your story, but not a whole lot of people do. And so I wonder if you could just share with us a little bit about what it was like growing up in New York, kind of during the era that the Get Down is trying to portray, and your experience of that. In particular, I'd like to hear about your relationship to hip hop, your relationship to the church, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, first let me say that I thought the Get Down captured some really good moments in terms of visuals. And so as I was watching it, I was like, yeah, I remember when we did that. Oh, man, that Park Jam. Or there's some scenes where they have the DJs are working and you see these fans on the side. They got it wrong in the sense that the fan is facing outward because the fan was actually supposed to cool off the amps that would blow out. So DJs had fans, but normally they were facing down onto the amps. But anyway, it was still a beautiful thing. So yeah, man, in the 70s, I'm a little older than most people expect. So in the 70s, I was a young teenager, and I remember hearing the first rhyme I ever heard that wasn't just some guys in the street, because everybody was doing it. Like with guys like, just kind of rhyme in the street. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just guys kind of just, riffing and stuff. And they didn't really have a name for it yet. There was no freestyling. It was just guys in the corner, kind of just in stoops, building stoops, just kicking it. And so the first song I ever heard, and on our website, elementschurch.com, you could see a video that I did a whole video on it. It was my first interaction with hip hop music, and I was with my girlfriend in her house, and I had my arm around her, and I was actually putting my arm around her, and all of a sudden I hear the hip on the radio, WBLS, Frankie Crocker, I'm sure, and I'm putting my arm around her, and I hear this, and I didn't realize that as I'm listening to the first, the first nationally recorded and distributed song, which was Rapper's Delight, I'm hearing Wonder Mike rhyme. My arm was coming off of her, and she's going, "What are you doing?" And I'm saying, leave me alone. I want to hear this." So I got engrossed. So I unpacked that whole scenario on our website. You can see it on the YouTube. It's called My Defining Moment in Hip Hop. And he says, hip hop, the hip to the hip, hip hop. You don't stop the rockin' to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie. Here it comes to the rhythm of the boogity beat. And then he says, what really got my arm off. He says, "Now what you hear is not a test. I'm rapping to the beat. Me, the crew, and my friends are gonna try to move your feet. Well, I am Wonder Mike, and I'd like to say hello." And I'm sure the rest of your listeners right now, they're finishing the rhyme to the black, the white, the red, and the brown, the purple, and yellow. And that just captivated me. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? And this guy is speaking, he's singing, speaking, and it's beautiful music behind it. And he's saying such an important message, which was, for me, what hip hop really is all inclusive. As long as you got some skill and or appreciation of it in one way or another, you're a part of it, and there's nothing you can do about it. That was my beginning. And I remember watching TV, and there was a show called What's Happening. I forgot his last name. First name was Freddie. I forgot his last name. It'll come to me. But he used to pop lock on the show, and so I'm good with visual imitation. So I would sit at my house whenever it was on, and I watch him, and I start pop locking. So then I go out on the streets, because we already have street jams. They close up the block, and then there was a DJ. Again, it wasn't like a scratching DJ yet. It was just a DJ playing music, and he'd say some words between the songs. Mixers weren't invented yet. So he dropped one song, right? And now he's got to switch to the other one. So he get on the mic, "Hey, all you hoppers, come on, y'all. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4," as he's putting the other record on. So no mixer, so he couldn't mix, and no scratching yet. And so he put it on the other record, and I'd be in front of the DJ pop locking, and I caught a little rep on my block, because there was that little chubby kid who pop lock a little bit. And I didn't know what I was doing, man. I was following this guy, whatever his name was, on that What's Happening. But then all of a sudden, stuff started to blow up. And for me, it really took place after I heard Rapper's Delight. I went out, and that next day, man. Oh, to close out the story, when I kind of got out of my daze, she's standing right next to me with my coat in her hand. She's like, "You can leave now." And I was like, all right, whatever. And for me, it's really, I had found something that was my voice. And so anyway, I went out, I bought the record, and I just didn't stop. I kept buying records. And then all of a sudden, they portrayed this in the show, The Blackout of '77. That was so pivotal, man. All of a sudden, everybody had two things. Of course, in the show, they talk about everybody. All of a sudden, everybody's a DJ, right? And all these crews popped up, and that's true. But some of us became mobile. I got a 10-speed bike, man, that I could ride all over the city. And I could go to all these park jams all over the place. And that was really what it was for me. And so I visited all these jams. I went to all these places. I had a route from my girlfriend's house to my house, because I knew I'd pass by like 3 or 4 different parks in the summer, that at any given time there's a jam going on with some DJs and some rappers. And so it just took off. And so my group, there was a crew on my block on 115th Street in the Jefferson Projects. I grew up in Spanish Harlem in Manhattan, called the Magic Crew. And they were a bunch of crazy dudes who could rhyme, man. They could rhyme. And they didn't have too many DJs. So they wanted me to DJ But I was like, nah, I didn't even I find it interesting. And I couldn't rhyme at all at the time. So what I did was I used to stand in front of it's another thing you don't see on the Get Down. We used to have people protecting the equipment. And I was one of them. So if this is the equipment back here, right? I'm just standing in front of the turntables like this. And anybody, not because people were going to steal it, because if someone touched the table, the record skipped, right? The needle skipped, and you ruined your whole set. So I'd stand and people would come by, I'd push them off. Sometimes there was fighting because nobody wants to be pushed, but that was my job, and I helped carry crates. So that's all I did with them. And then years later, I come to Christ, and I think I'm in church about a year, and I was praying one night. It was one of those real late night prayers. It was just, it's just where I was at the time, and I was praying, and I hear words in my head. Was it words? Yeah, it was words in my head first. I hear words, and I was like, ooh, maybe I always wanted to sing or something. So it's a song. So I wrote it down, and I look at it, and I said, all right, let me try and sing it. And it sounded really weird. It was odd, and it was almost like a Las Vegas lounge act. It was terrible. So I was like, all right, I'm just bugging out. I put it in my night table. A couple of weeks later, same thing happened. I was praying, and I heard a classic hip hop beat in my head, which is big beat. Boom, boom, bap, bap, boom, bap, boom, boom, bap, bap, boom, bap. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Why are you having me hear this in my head now, Lord? And I remember the lyrics. So I pulled them out, and that's how I started rhyming. It's going to be 92, 93 when I started to rhyme. And that was the beginning. I wrote my first rhyme. That prayer, I still have the first rhyme I ever wrote. And then I kept writing rhymes. And now I felt like God wanted me to do something with it. And I thought I invented Christian hip hop because I'd never heard of anybody else doing it. And then I came from a Spanish Pentecostal environment. And you don't do that, right?
Just like Mylene, right?
Right. No, you don't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't do that. So I was like not telling anybody. I'm writing all these rhymes. And then the pastor's son, who played in a salsa band, and he was really progressive for that environment. I said to him, yo, Danny, I got God gave me something, man. Let me just share it with you. And he went bananas. He loved it. He's like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is great. We got to do it at the church. And I was like, no, they're going to kick me out. So we did it real slow, real jazzy. Like, he was a great musician. He got the guys to play something real, like, real jazzy. So it almost went over like poetry. But once they heard it, they kind of knew, but they didn't. They kind of, I don't know. It was like this weird moment, but I didn't stop after that. And then Danny says to me, hey man, you got to connect with my friend Bert. And I was like, okay, who is he? And he said, he's been rhyming for like 10 years. And I was like, I thought I invented this thing. So I hooked up with Bert. They used to do this, and it was classic. The place is like renowned. It used to, every hip hop artist in the 90s had to play at Salem Coffee House. And from Salem Coffee House, so he and I met, we became good buddies. We're still best friends, and did all this ministry together. And then together with his brother and a couple other people from the church, we decided to start Rap Fest. So Rap Fest was born out of that coffee house ministry. And Rap Fest started out with just, 30, 40 people from the church outside, an outside event. We invited some rappers. Here's a little trivia. First rapper ever rapped at Rap Fest was me. Cross Movement, their very first signing on a label was done at that very first Rap Fest. So a little trivia. And we had maybe 30 people, 40 people, probably mostly from the church, and then whoever came with the rappers. And we had a few rappers. It was cool. It was nothing incredible in terms of like this big event. But we saw the impact it was having on the neighborhood. People were coming out, hip hop was drawing people out. And so we decided to make it a yearly event. And so that's where Rap Fest was born. And that lasted about 22 years. Wow. And at the height of Rap Fest, we were getting 5,000 or 6,000 people out in the street. And the beauty of it is we saw people get saved. We saw people meet their future spouses and all of that stuff, and we never had a problem, no fights, no anything. But man, I can tell you how many stories I hear and even some Christian rappers of today saying, hey man, I went to Rap Fest, and it was at a Rap Fest, and I realized, I could do this hip hop stuff and still love Jesus. So we did that for a long time, and then after a while, I felt the call to plant the church. So I've been an MC, I've been a crate watcher, an equipment, bodyguard type thing. A rapper. I traveled all up and down the East Coast. At the height of it, I was doing like 3 shows at 300 shows. 100 shows a year. 100 shows a year for 3 years. Did a lot of good work, seen a lot of people come to Christ as a result of it. So everything I do is kind of filtered through hip hop. And then for me, it was just a natural kind of progression from this to church planting. If this is what I was going to do, it had to have who I am, what my culture is. My culture is more hip hop than Puerto Rican. That's just who I am, So yeah, for us, hey, sorry, people coming in the church. For us here at the church, it's just a natural thing. We don't walk around going, hey, we're a hip hop church. People don't walk around going, hey, I go to a black church or I go to a Chinese church. They go to church. For us, it's just church. And for us, there's no demarcation line. Like this is here and this is there. We're very free with the arts here. We have graffiti all over the church. We've had some international supreme graffiti artists come and do some work here. You can see it all on our Facebook and all of that stuff. And so, we're very proud of the fact that we are unapologetically hip hop. We have hip hop pretty much every Sunday, not every Sunday, but pretty much. On any given Sunday, we'll burst out in the middle of a song with a hot 16, and everybody goes crazy, and it's exciting. So, I think that's pretty much it. I went from secular in that way to Christian hip hop because I thought I invented it, right? And to where we are now.
Yeah, I love when you talk about hip hop as the culture in which you were immersed and which gave you identity and gave you purpose. I love when you talk about that because I identify with that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Being a white guy, I don't have like a real strong connection to my European roots.
Right.
It was like you were just generic white guy. And what gave me definition for my identity, for my purpose was hip hop. I remember feeling the same way. Like it's all, doesn't matter if you're black, white, doesn't matter. Like we're all united in this thing. And
right. And if you look back at the beginning of the culture, right, it didn't start off as a culture. It started off with these pockets of activity, right. And they all kind of came together. For me, it's one of those things where they were just drawn to each other because so much of it was A, illegal, so much of it was B, created by people who were poor, that had nothing. Mm-hmm. And so you had these graffiti artists doing some stuff that was ultra illegal, especially when Koch said, I'm going to get rid of all of those thugs, right? He does that in the show. Mm-hmm. And then you had these break dancers, and don't think they weren't, like, they would do stuff in the street and they'd be run off. Many times, I didn't dance. I did a little bit, just a tiny bit. But I didn't really dance. Anything happened, we all ran with them. And then you had, so one thing that they didn't show on the Get Down was like the illegal stuff in terms of putting on these park jams and like the battles that they showed. You drew power from the light post. They had a way. We had a way of jacking the power. So all of these things to me is what brought it all together. And the beauty of it all completely is you have black, white, Latino. Everybody's involved in it. Everybody in one way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And so in the beginning, you had like most of the white kids were writers, graph writers. Most of the Latinos were b-boys, and then most of the blacks were MCs and DJs. But then as time went on, that got nicely mixed. But it all came together in this beautiful fusion. And it's somehow they were just drawn magnetically or magically, or I like to say divinely. They were drawn together. Like, for me, God created this thing, and one of the ways I kind of say that I'm sure that God is because the hip hop has reached some places that the gospel has not, and so You can the Bronx Museum a few years back had this amazing exhibit on world hip hop, and they took you back and they showed you places where hip hop, whether it's music or fashion, has got or iconic images have gotten to, but the gospel has not, running water has not, stuff like that. So I think it's a God thing, but that's just me.
No, I think that's a good segue to a question I had. Is when you and I think about the mission of the church, when you and I think about evangelism and what does it mean to be the church, it's all caught up in that hip hop culture. Where do you see the intersections? Like, I think one of them that's obvious is this multi-ethnicity, right? This coming together of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultural experiences within their families to form one new a third culture, right? Yeah. So, I mean, how do you see yourself and your church in the midst of that? Maybe talk a little theological about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, let me not touch theologically. First, let me just say, well, I guess it is theological. First, just say that in so many churches that I was a part of, people like me were shunned. Even, listen, we started the church. I was already pastoring. And I went to visit a church, and I had a hat on very similar to the one you have on. And I was not allowed in the building with that hat. So that's a manifestation of bad theology to me, right? Yep. And so that is why we started the church. I'm sorry. Can you just close the door? I'm doing an interview. That's my beautiful wife and my daughter. So that's one of the reasons why we started the church, because people like me, people like you, would be run off. I mean, I'm a pastor. I have like my whole church planting team with me. We went to a church to visit, and they told me I had to leave the hat in the car, bro. So that's one reason. So that's a manifestation of bad theology, right? Yeah. And then theologically, for me, it goes back to the Great Commission, where it says all nations, all nations. And I sat back, and at the time, man, Christian hip hop, for example, today is not what it was when I started. It was not even what it was 10 years ago. And so we started the church conceptually a little over 10 years ago. And so at the time, it wasn't this popular, not to mention there weren't too many churches involved in hip hop culture. And I just said, man, and it wasn't just me, it was a group of us that said, man, this cannot be the case. People like us are being left out. Right. And so we decided, theologically speaking, to be a church that does deal with all nations. So you'll see people come up in here in a suit and tie. We don't make fun of them, but they'll be sitting next to the guy in a tank top and a hat like yours, and that's fine. So for us, it's hip hop all over again. It's all inclusive. Right. There's no selectiveness. There's no elect here. Yeah. Church, like you got to be this and do that. No, man. I have people in this church from all walks of life. Man, it's just a beautiful picture for me of the church, of what the church should look like and what the church should be. All inclusive, inviting everyone, open to everyone. And so, like I said, you'll have the person in a suit sitting next to somebody in a tank and a hat. And it's just fine. It works. And theologically speaking, I always think about hip hop through a lens of liberation. I believe that it brought us to a different place. A place, sometimes just having a voice, that's the only power we're gonna have. Right. And so in the 70s, when that came out, man, for me, I sat there listening to Wonder Mike. He sounded like me. He used words like I did. And I said to myself, man, this is me. I'm still the same way, so unprejudiced. I love people of all races, colors, ethnicities. I love them. I did then as a kid. That's how I was brought up. And so he's saying this, and I don't know if I'd ever heard anyone on TV, radio, any media really talk this way. Not me. I'm from the hood. I was a street kid. Don't talk to me about books back then. I didn't. I used them to prop stuff up. Laptop. And so for me, this was now all of a sudden informing me, speaking for me, giving me my moral compass. And a few years later, the message comes out, and I'm like, yo, that's where I live. He's talking about people pissing in the stairways, et cetera, et cetera. That's my neighborhood. That's where I live. And so, yeah, I think theologically speaking, we're talking about inclusiveness. We're also talking about having a voice and power. Sometimes just having that voice empowers someone to do great things. And I know for me, listening to that stuff, I remember the first week or two after hearing Rapper's Delight 50, 30 times, walking into school, a predominantly white school, and now my head is held up. I got a little pump in my chest, and I'm saying, I could say a few things now. I'm able to, and I don't think people who aren't oppressed understand that.
Yeah.
And oppression comes in all kinds of ways, but I think if you've never gone through some kind of oppression where you pushed aside, and I want to use the word marginalized. If you, my little box right here that I'm talking to you in, if I'm pushed to these margins, then I understand this stuff of all of a sudden having a voice.
Right.
And
that's so much of what the Get Down is talking about, right? Because like Mylene has this dream, to get out of her neighborhood and to be somebody. And to do something with her life, and Ezekiel too. Ezekiel also wants to do something with his life.
He just doesn't know how to articulate it.
Right.
He thinks it's just to hang out in the hood and rhyme and get down, and that's it.
But there's this wonderful scene when Grandmaster Flash. I know you want to say something about that too, because I saw it in your comment. But there's this wonderful scene when Grandmaster Flash is trying to break something down to Shaolin about the power of music. He says, music will take you there. Musical, you could ride on its wings. Like it has that liberating empowerment built into it. Like you said, it gives you a voice. You could feel like you're somebody. You could feel like you have something important to say. And I feel like that's a really big part of the show, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yep, I agree. I mean, Zeke couldn't. He didn't have. First of all, he didn't have parents, right? He lived with his aunt and uncle. He didn't have anyone who would really listen to him. The aunt she didn't seem bad. She just seemed like she just didn't, hurry up, finish school, go to school, make sure you go to school. And the uncle wanted to turn him into him. Like, you're going to be like me, and that's it. You don't have anything else. And so he didn't have a voice. He didn't have any power or authority. And all of a sudden, they recognize that he's a wordsmith. Is that the word they used, right?
Yeah, I think so. Wordsmith.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, he has now this title. All of a sudden, he's given some authority because he's a wordsmith. Yeah. All of a sudden, people are listening to what he says. And I don't know that he understood that in the beginning. Remember the teacher? The beginning with the teacher, he wouldn't recite his thing.
That's right.
He didn't get how much power he had until, I think two things. When he finally said it to her, and he took the paper and said, boom, and he just recited it, right? Off the top. I think he realized, I can do that. And then right here, I'm hurting her. I'm just showing her. But then later on, when Shao says, you're my wordsmith, now it's a whole different story. Right. But interestingly enough, there's a little undercurrent here where he's trying to kick it to Mylene, right? Kick it to her. He hardly uses regular sentences, bro. If you look at it, he's saying all these love poems as he's talking to her. Right. And I thought to myself, he does understand. He's just not applying it to everything. He's just applying it in the space that he thinks he has a chance with her. Yeah. But everything he said was all this lovey-dovey stuff, all this poetry and love. And I said to myself, man, it's a really good representation of how we are, because we think, well, I think in this area I can use it, right? And I don't think that God creates us that way. I think God creates us how we are, and take this thing that we do and just share it everywhere. And in some it'll be good soil, and some it'll be bad soil, and that's okay. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Going back to the mission of the church, there's this beautiful scene in episode 4. I think it's episode 4, when Jackie, who is the producer, who is producing Mylene's song, he's gotten he had this like drug binge, and he's got nothing, but he shows up and he's in the moment, and in that moment, Mylene's father, the pastor, is exposed. All his sins are exposed by his brother.
Yeah.
And there's this moment when Jackie goes, yeah, we're all sinners. And actually there's sinners in the club, and that's who we need to reach.
Right.
And so what if we took this music, this hymn, and what if we just put a disco beat to it, you know, and Mylene sings it. And I thought of you in that moment, because I'm like, that's you, that's your heart. Your heart is, man, I'm in the streets. These are my people. You know, I want to bring a message to them in the language that I have, in the music and the style that I have. Right. And you just combine that. You put your story with God's story into the music. And it was, to me, it was just like a representation of what Christian hip hop must have felt like for you in that early time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, being in the street was, and still is, I just, it's the epitome of me being the most useful to me. There are things as a pastor that I'd rather never ever do, but being in the street, that's where I think I belong. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I think for me, the best times I've ever ministered ever were in the street. I remember just ripping some songs, and my pastor at the time with this ministry called Storytellers, and he had never seen me really do this in the street. And we were a break between, we're doing these what we call hit and runs. We go all over the city in cars and flood the neighborhood like for 30 minutes. We do like 20-minute concerts, and then we pack everything up and go to the next spot. So we did this one Saturday in one location in the Bronx. And so we had a truck, we had the location, we were good. So we would take 15-minute breaks every now and then. And I remember going into the truck, because it was the only place that had air conditioning. And so I sat in the truck with him. He's sitting in the other seat, and we're just kind of just like lounging, just relaxing. And he says to me, man, you are like a hip hop evangelist. You like, your whole heart and spirit right now have been completely exposed, and you leave it all out there for these people. And I thought to myself, yeah, you know, I never thought of that. I would rather be on the street. And to me, the reason I'd rather be on the street is, you know, church, there's politics, there's agendas and all of that stuff. And in the street, man, you just got people that are jacked up, people that maybe are straying, people of all, in all kinds of places, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But for me, the place that all of them are in is real. They're in a real place, and they need real help, and they'll recognize real help. They will recognize fakeness. They'll recognize truth and honesty. And so when I think that we speak in their language, whatever that language is, and for us it's hip hop, right? We speak in their language, and we tell them the truth, the inherent truths of the gospel. Mm-hmm. They have to respond. Yeah. They do. Yeah. And so I could tell you stories. We have a couple in our church. This family's in our church only because she saw us at a concert, one of these things. I have a couple of people, and I have friends all over, you know, the Bronx who've come to Christ through these types of ministries. And just being in the streets. I loved that scene, man. My in Spanish, mi pelito se pararon. My hair stood up a little bit because I was just like, yes, that's it. Now, I personally couldn't go back to a club and do my thing. That's just me, because I don't think I'm called to that. I think I'm called to the street. But the idea is to be where the sinners are, and I think they captured that pretty well. Yeah. However, I kind of think it was just to get the song done. But regardless, and there's truth in all of that too. Yeah. So I was good with that, you know.
Yeah, I love what you were saying about just the authenticity of the streets, and I think that's what that moment captured for me. It was that the pastor had this facade, right? The pastor had this phony, holier than thou facade, and the brother was like, I'm gonna pierce that facade, and we're all gonna get real for a moment. And when they got real for a moment, that's when the music happened, right? Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about one more thing. You mentioned in your comment that you felt like in the show they were touching on political issues that were happening in that day, but at the same time, it was a commentary on politics of our day, right now in this moment. And I wanted to know if you could just elaborate on that, just your thoughts.
Well, are we going to talk about what I didn't like in the Get Down?
Yeah. That you can, go for that.
Do that one first?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. What do you think the Get Down got right, and what do you think it got wrong?
Yeah, well, the music was fun. I thought, like I said, the images were fantastic. I know a graffiti artist who's also a believer. His name is Crash, which he was in the movie. The character was in the show. He actually got him and I think it's Dez also in the show. They got pulled in as advisors. I think they wanted them to teach some people how to draw graffiti, and they were like, we can't do that in a couple of weeks, right? So what they did was they designed the graffiti, and other people painted it in, but they designed it also. So that was exciting. They were part of it. I think the graffiti stuff was really good. I thought the images, the stories of the South Bronx burning, really, really good stuff. Very, very on point. And I I don't look at this show as a historical piece. It's definitely an entertainment piece, but it has so much good stuff. I thought some of the actors were so good. Jimmy Smits is the bomb. The guy who played Koch was on point, man. It was so good. I really liked the guy who played Flash and the guy who played Herc. On point. Those dudes had it. They were on point. And again, the music that they wrote for the show was fun to listen to. You know, took you back a bit, old school style rhyming and stuff. And you hear it because they're going crazy for what today would be like such simple rhymes. But it was good. What I didn't enjoy, they did a few things wrong. Some scenes had music that were later than 70s. So they could have taken care of that, I thought. That to me is laziness. Here's a little nitpick. They used a non-Bronx MC to be the voice of Z.
Yeah, Nas. Yeah.
You can't take, there's no taking anything away from Nas.
Yeah.
However, I think it could have been a Bronx MC just to add that authenticity. But, you know, Nas is an executive producer on the show. So, and again, that's not a deal breaker. They used some terms wrong, which drove me insane. There was one little scene where, what's her name? Malia? What is her name? Mylene.
Yeah.
Yeah, she says, tecado. The word tecado. And what she was talking about was a drug addict. The word is actually tecato. And I actually had on the subtitles, and they spelled it out, and it's spelled wrong. Anyway, it's wrong. It's like anyone from that era knows what that is, because heroin was everywhere. And the word for these people, the street word was, oh, look at that tecato, right? Like, they should know that. They also, I liked the title, The Get Down, but they used that wrong. For example, it's the breakbeat. It's not the get down of the song. I never heard of that. I've never, ever heard of that. Why would they do that? I don't understand that. It is the breakbeat. What is the get down when the B-boys get down? No, it's the breakbeat. That's where they get the word breaker from, right? They called them B-boy, breakbeat, and then they eventually became commercialized as a breakdancing and breaker. But that's where it comes from, the breakbeat. And that's where they would extend the music, and they'd go back and forth. I also didn't like, again, he's an executive producer on the show apparently, how they made Flash almost a mythical character. I appreciated Shaolin as a mythical character because he was a character.
Right.
I did not appreciate so much Flash's sensei, you know, the ancient one type vibe that he had. You know what I mean? Like, he was a kung fu master.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate that. And having met him, I appreciated it less, to be honest with you. But all of that aside, it's definitely worth watching. It's super nostalgic. It's fun. They got some other things wrong, but, you know, for me, that's kind of nitpicking. And, you know, I think it's even some of the things I said, I think are nitpicking, but, you know, I would have done some stuff different. I would have done some things different.
They should have consulted you, man.
I agree. I would have done have my name on that thing. I think I really loved the intersection of the church and hip hop in that era, because, and well, it was honestly, it was actually more the intersection of the church and disco.
Right.
So that's a animal. However, it's a street thing, street culture, street vibe, and I just think the intersection of the sacred and the secular played itself out really well. The tension was great because when I started rhyming in some of these Spanish Pentecostal churches, man, I got mics turned off, sound systems clicked off, never invited again. What you're doing is of the devil, that type of stuff. So it was kind of similar. So I'm sitting there watching. I'm going, oh yeah, And again, I agree with you. They made the pastor to be such a holy man, and I think again with hip hop, authenticity says that you tell your story, man. You tell them where you've been. You tell them. You tell them, hey, this is where I've messed up. This is where I still struggle.
Right.
And you keep it moving. That's one of the things. We get a lot of people. I don't know if any of your readers, listeners, viewers now watch any of these shows like Black Ink and, Love and Hip Hop. We get some of those people come through here because some of our people are connected to them through party promotions and different things like that. So when they come here, I could see them shaking, man. I can see them terrified to come to the church and meet the pastor. And so our people are like, nah, you got to meet him. He's different. And I remember one in particular, I met her. I saw her when they came in, and I went over and I said hi. I couldn't remember who she was, but she looked familiar. And I looked at her and I said, you look kind of familiar. And she looked at her friend, which is a member at our church. She looked at her and they looked at each other, and I saw the tension. And she said, yeah, I'm from, and it hit me what show she was on. And no worries. Great to have. I gave her a big hug. Man, I could see it was like letting the air out of a balloon. And she sat like almost in the front row. And I remember throughout the sermon, she's like, preach. And so I don't think that these kinds of people still get a place to go where they can be comfortable, not condemned. And it's not watering down the gospel and the truth at all. We don't do that. However, I don't have to beat people upside the head.
Right.
I don't have to carry the biggest Bible in the room and bop people with it. So, yeah, I think those are the things I didn't like. But overall, for the show, man, I think everybody should watch it. I think it's a great viewing, especially if you love hip hop.
Yeah, younger heads like me are loving this show because it's like the roots. It's the history. It's
so really you think that younger people? How about younger than you?
I don't know about younger than me.
Yeah, those are the people I'm interested in, because you're already ahead, man. For example, you're gonna look at everything. I have a friend who's writing a book on the history of tattoos. All right, he's getting into the sacred versus the secular of tattoos and all of that. A friend of mine from Australia, and so like I know if I say, hey, here's that book, you're gonna eat it up because you're already into the culture, So I'm just curious about younger people, I would love to hear like some teens and stuff, what they say about it.
Honestly, I think hip hop has changed a whole lot, even since when I was a kid.
That's a whole nother show, bro.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you want to say something about the commentary that this show has for our current political climate?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, there was a lot of being alive at the time. I know that there was a lot of corruption in politics, and the Bronx, for example. Even in Manhattan, there was a group called the Young Lords, which is the Puerto Rican equivalent to the Black Panthers, and they were here in New York. And you can look them up online. Great history, great story. And when they started, they went around the neighborhood trying to figure out what the need was. They started as a social club type thing, and they weren't really a gang, but things happen. And so they went around the neighborhood trying to figure out what do we need? What do we need to do? What do you need to the people who live there? And at the time, it was the 70s. At the time, I think it was the early 70s. At the time, the sanitation wasn't picking up the garbage in Spanish Harlem in the hood. They just weren't picking it up. And so that was the answer. We need to get rid of all this garbage. I remember that. I remember growing up as a kid and seeing mounds of garbage in front of my building. And my mom was the super. My mom was the super of the building. So I was connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the residents of the neighborhood said was, we got to get rid of it. So they tried, they went to the sanitation and they asked for help. Sanitation refused. They went another day to the sanitation and they just took all the brooms and they said, we're going to clean it up ourselves. Sanitation called the cops. They did some cleaning, but they had to give everything back. Finally, they said, well, we need to do something radical. So what they did was they took all the garbage that was not cleaned up, and all up and down the neighborhood, the major streets like 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, in Spanish Harlem, they created bonfires. I remember my mom saying, we need to get out of here, and going to my cousin's house, because it was just me and my mom at the time. So she was afraid, and we're literally walking uptown further. I lived on 105th, and they were on 112th, so we're walking all these streets, and on every other corner, there's a bonfire of garbage. And so I remember that. Why am I saying that? Because for me, that was systematic. That was a systematic oppression for the hood. And so in the Bronx, same things happened. Then you had the landlords, which is greatly depicted in the show, on the Get Down, burning their homes, because now the hood is, urbanites, inner city, blacks and Latinos are coming in. And so their property values are going down, and they become slumlords. And at the end of it, they don't want to deal with it anymore. And so they just torch the homes, the buildings, for insurance purposes, right? They get their insurance. Systemic, all systemic. You don't see any of that happening anywhere else, especially where there's money. You don't see that happening in the white neighborhoods. So, that's one way. Then you had the corruption, and they don't. They don't really touch upon it in the Get Down, except for that one moment where Koch comes, right?
Yeah.
And he says to Jimmy Smith's character, and it's interesting.
You're a poverty pimp.
Yeah. But if you watch that scene again, Koch never says anything that is underhanded. It's the other guy. That's not the other character's name. He's the one that says everything. He even tells Koch, Ed, shut up. And he keeps talking to this Jimmy Smith. And I said to myself, there it is. This is what we're still dealing with, the systemic stuff, like the garbage and the burning. We're not burning buildings, but now it's gentrification. The South Bronx, where a lot of that took place, is changing.
Right.
Coming in, they're building these beautiful big buildings. The rents are going sky high, and it's our poor people are being pushed out. That's going on right now. So it's not too different. It wasn't gentrification then, it was burning them out, but it was the same thing. And so some of those same neighborhoods are looking so fly right now. It's unbelievable. And so we're still dealing with that. We're still dealing with corruption in political structure, law enforcement, and all the issues that are going on now, still going on from then to now. And then, for every interaction of white people in the show, of authority, it was us against them.
Right.
Everyone. And so that's what I see in today's politics. It's us against them.
Right.
I see these lines being drawn in the sand, and you stay here and I'm here, and you don't belong over here. You see that. And for me, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. And I found it interesting. I found it interesting that we're still dealing with the same stuff. Yep. Some of the names change in terms of what it's called. They were burning them out before. Now it's gentrification. But the idea is that they're still pulling these people out.
Right.
No place to live.
Displacement. Either way. Yeah.
That's the word. And so, man, there's so many little things like that if I sat down and I wrote, all right, let me tick off. Here it is. Bang. Man, I could probably fill a notebook, man, with all the things, and that's the truth. And even the music side of it all, the antagonism towards this music. I still cannot believe. Man, we tried to get a permit for an event here, and when I told the woman in the parks department that we were going to have a DJ, she said no. I said, what do you mean? She said, we can't have a DJ in the park. I said, I'm part of citywide events. We have DJs all the time. Yeah, well, each area is run a different way, and I'm in charge of this one, and I'm saying no DJs in the park.
Wow.
I'm like, we're playing Christian music. Sorry, we won't have a DJ in the park. That draws a bad element. That's what she said.
In 2016.
2016.
Wow.
2016. So, yeah, hip hop is still got a bad name. It's still being blamed for a lot of stuff in this country.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching something, I can't remember what it was, and all they showed was pictures of black. Actually, I could tell you what it was. It was a show on football, and they showed all these black athletes, right? And of course, they showed every single one looking like a thug. That's the way they portrayed them, and I just thought to myself, man, they don't portray these white athletes who are right next to them the same way. Mm-hmm. So we still see all of that stuff.
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's pretty much where I stand with that stuff.
Man, it's always a pleasure talking with you, and this has been an honor, man. I've been wanting to pick your brain about this show and just about your experiences and everything. I also want to give anybody watching this an opportunity to partner with you, to support your work, to follow your work. So where can people find you online? You already mentioned the website, right?
Well, I didn't say the website. I said the website. Okay. elementschurch.com. You can see us there. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Anything, just search Elements Church. And I just wanted to throw this little plug in. We just did this thing called Transformers. So what we do is we go out into the subways, and we bring a cajon, which I have one right here, and we rhyme. We sing a couple of worship songs. Sometimes we have a guitar, and we just do church in the subway. We don't do anything crazy. We're not preaching. It's just, little testimony. God's done this. Sometimes we read a little scripture, but most of the time we're singing and rapping, having a great time. And so we partnered. American Bible Society approached us about doing this, and so this is what we're going to be giving out now in the trains. It's called Transformers Tracks on Tracks, an urban journey through Scripture, which myself and our team wrote. We wrote every piece inside. And so it's just a 7-day devotional. It's a journey through Scripture. We'll be giving these out. It's really exciting for us because it's literally our voice. I got to design the cover, kid. So that was really fun.
Where can folks buy that?
Well, I'm not sure yet.
What about the American Bible Society?
I'm gonna come here, baby. I'm gonna get all that information. This is my friend TC. This is my baby Isabel Rose. Say hi, Mama.
Hey, Izzy.
You remember him? No? Oh, you cut your hair.
We used to go to summer camp together up in New Hampshire.
Logan Pines with his kids, remember? Trinity? No?
She was little.
Yeah, so I'm getting all that information soon, and I'll put it out on the website, and so it'll be there. But it's a 7-day spiritual journey, and we'll be giving them out in the streets of New York City. And you can see the back, ABS and Elements Church. And so, yeah, man. And I want to give a big shout out to our worship leader. I want you to meet him because he's an exceptional MC. He has a crew called Jesus Peace. They're off the chain. So that's it. elementschurch.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and everything.
Thank you so much for doing this, bro. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime you want to just kick it, bro. Let's Skype.
All right, man. Peace.
My love to the fan, bro.
You too.
All right, peace.